Abilities in Pokemon provide passive effects to the user, but they typically come with some kind of drawback or condition in which they can be activated, such as only activating one time, only working on a certain type of move, or only activating at a certain amount of HP. This helps to balance them out and not make them overwhelmingly powerful. Sometimes though, Game Freak throws this balance out the window and instead just makes the most broken abilities ever that they quote-unquote justify by giving them significantly worse distribution. So in this video, let's compare balanced Pokemon abilities that have drawbacks to make them fair versus broken abilities that don't have those drawbacks. First, we have Heatproof in pretty much any individual status condition preventing ability compared to Purifying Salt. Heatproof has two effects. It halves damage from fire-type attacks by having the attack or special attack stat of the attacker when using a fire-type move, and halves damage from burns. This is very fair and reasonable, and it's especially good on Sinistcha and Bronzong since it turns their fire weakness into a neutrality. The burn halving effect isn't super useful since you still get the attack halving effect, but it is a nice bonus. Individual status condition preventing abilities like Insomnia prevent one status condition. Compare this to Purifying Salt, which has 6 effects, halving the damage from ghost-type attacks and preventing all non-volatile status conditions, so burn, freeze, sleep, paralysis, and poison. Its drawback? None. Well, I guess it has the drawback that it doesn't heal status conditions if Purifying Salt was temporarily nullified or bypassed, unlike most individual status condition immune abilities that would heal those status conditions once the ability is regained. But realistically, that's only ever going to be relevant when Mold Breaker or Neutralizing Gas get involved, and that's not all that often. So yeah, this ability is just busted. Next, we have a pretty similar entry, which is Water Veil compared to Water Bubble. Water Veil prevents the user from getting burned. Like I mentioned in the last entry, almost all individual status condition preventing abilities also heal status conditions after gaining the ability, which is a nice bonus for Water Veil. Water Bubble prevents the user from getting burned, halves the damage from fire-type attacks, and doubles the power of water-type moves as a hidden effect. It even has the effect of healing burns, unlike Purifying Salt that was at least balanced out by not doing that. Might as well have it file your taxes too. Water Bubble is just an insane ability, and it makes Araquanid actually decent, a mon that would otherwise be very underwhelming. If you're wondering exactly how much Water Bubble affects its damage output, when using a physical move like Liquidation, Araquanid hits as hard as if its base attack stat was around 190. When using a special move like Surf, it hits as hard as if its base special attack stat was around 150. Of course, the specifics vary depending on how much offensive EV investment Araquanid has, but you get the point that this is an incredibly powerful ability. Next, we have Magnet Pull compared to Shadow Tag. Magnet Pull traps the opponent if they're Steel type, so they're unable to switch, and if it's a wild Pokemon, they're unable to flee. This is good for trapping a Steel type that you know can't really do anything to your Pokemon, allowing you to set up or knock them out and put yourself in a better position going forward. Shadow Tag straight up traps all opposing Pokemon and doesn't have any condition that needs to be met like being a certain type. Starting in Gen 4, if your opponent also has Shadow Tag, they cannot be trapped by your Shadow Tag. Gen 4 also introduced the Shed Shell, which allows a trapped Pokemon to switch out of battle by anything that traps them, and starting in Gen 6, Ghost-type Pokemon were made immune to all forms of trapping. These two things affect both abilities equally though, so Shadow Tag is still way better. Shadow Tag is also mostly better than Arena Trap, which traps all opposing grounded Pokemon, meaning that flying types and ghost types are immune, but Arena Trap doesn't have the condition that opposing Arena Trap Pokemon are immune like Shadow Tag does. Next, we have Fluffy compared to Fur Coat. Fluffy halves the damage taken from contact moves at the cost of fire-type moves dealing double damage. A fire weakness isn't great, but taking half damage from all contact moves is a great effect to have for defensive Pokemon. Fur Coat halves the damage from all physical moves with no drawback, and since almost all contact moves are physical, Fur Coat is just way better. Or is it? When making this video, I found out that the damage halving effect of Fluffy is different from Fur Coat. Here's a damage calculation example with a Mew using Body Slam on another Mew. I like using Mew because it has the same stats all around, and we're using Body Slam since it's physical, makes contact, and deals neutral damage. Mew normally takes 18.1 to 21.4%, which is 62 to 73 HP worth of damage. Fluffy halves the HP damage and rounds down if it's originally odd, so the 62 turns into 31 and the 73 turns into 36, resulting in Mew taking 9 to 10.5%. Fur Coat works by doubling the user's defense stat, so it's the equivalent of if the defending Mew had +2 defense, or if the attacking Mew had -2 attack, since multiplying the numerator by 2 is the same as dividing the denominator by 2, resulting in the defending Mew taking 9 to 10.8%. I still don't think this slight bit less of damage is worth having a fire weakness and only working on contact moves, even if there are special contact moves that Fur Coat doesn't have the damage from, but it is still interesting. Fur Coat does not increase the damage of Body Press, by the way, since Body Press only factors in the user's effective defense stat and defense boosts, with all other modifiers being what they are normally for physical attacking moves, so its damage would be boosted by Huge Power and reduced from Burn. Next, we have Hustle compared to Huge Power. Hustle increases the user's attack by 50%, but lowers its accuracy by 20%. Specifically, it multiplies the user's effective attack stat by 1.5 and multiplies the accuracy of its physical moves by 3,277 4,096, which is approximately 0.8. Why do they use this really big fraction instead of just 4/5? For some game coding reason that I don't really understand super well, but feel free to elaborate on it in the comments. A 50% boost is quite high, but lowering accuracy is not ideal, so this ability is really only good if the user has a perfectly accurate move or has a way to boost accuracy like with Hone Claws or Coil. Huge Power, on the other hand, straight up doubles the user's attack stat with no drawback. Well, if we're being real, its drawback is that in context, it's given to Pokemon with low attack stats, but in a vacuum, Huge Power is just better than Hustle in every single way. This also applies to Guerrilla Tactics, which boosts the user's attack stat by 50% but locks them into one move, which again in context is probably better than Huge Power, but in a vacuum, Huge Power is just busted. Next, we have Drought compared to Orichalcum Pulse. Drought sets Harsh Sunlight for 5 turns when the user is sent in battle. This is a great effect since Harsh Sunlight as a field condition has all sorts of uses, like boosting fire moves, weakening water moves, and activating some abilities. Orichalcum Pulse sets Harsh Sunlight for 5 turns upon entry and boosts the user's attack stat by 33%, which again is technically by this weird fraction with a denominator of 4,096. The reason that Koraidon just has a better version of Drought is that it's the strongest past Paradox Pokemon, and all of the past Paradox Pokemon have abilities that boost their highest stat in Harsh Sunlight, so it makes sense for Koraidon to set Sun and have a boost to one of its stats. It is interesting that Orichalcum Pulse always boosts attack by 33% as opposed to Photosynthesis, which boosts the highest stat by 30%, 50% if it's speed. All of this applies to Electric Surge and Hadron Engine, by the way, which have the exact same effects except for electric terrain. I feel like these abilities could have been balanced by the field condition only lasting 3 turns instead of the normal 5 turns, but I guess not. Next, we have Iron Fist compared to Tough Claws. Iron Fist grants a 20% boost to the user's punching moves. This ability just screams, I was made before Gen 6 because of how pitiful the power boost is. I understand why it was made this way at the time, which was because it was given to Hitmonchan in Gen 4 as a counterpart to Hitmonlee's Reckless. Reckless grants a 20% boost to recoil moves, but since recoil moves have much higher base power, 20% is actually pretty decent. Anyway, Tough Claws grants a 30% boost to all of the user's contact moves, so it not only has a higher power boost than Iron Fist, but it also affects all of the same moves and more. The only slight benefit of Iron Fist is that it stacks with a Punching Glove item for an overall 32% boost and makes it so that those punching moves do not make contact. If you use this with Tough Claws, those punching moves will not make contact and therefore wouldn't meet the requirement to get a boost. Iron Fist really needs to get buffed so that it grants a 50% boost instead of 20%. The only major balancing issue would be Melmetal's double Iron Bash, but just lower it from 60 base power to 50 and it's fine. Drain Punch getting boosted by 50% would be strong on Conkeldurr, but Conkeldurr also has Guts, an ability that boosts its attack by 50% when statused, so it's already been doing this. Next, we have Big Pecks compared to Clear Body. Kind of like the last entry, this is less of one ability being balanced and the other being broken, and more of one ability being terrible and the other being decent. Big Pecks protects the user from having its defense stat lowered, while Clear Body protects the user from having all of its stats lowered. Kenai is another similar ability to Big Pecks in that it only prevents one stat from being lowered, accuracy, but in Gen 6, it was given the additional effect that it also allows the user to ignore the target's evasion stat changes. This isn't much, but it is something in its favor over Clear Body, which by the way now has an item with its exact effect, the Clear Amulet. I feel like if Big Pecks were to be given some kind of effect to not just make it a complete downgrade to Clear Body, it would be that it allows the user to ignore the opponent's attack boosts, just like how Kenai now ignores evasion boosts. This would actually be decent, but let me know if you have any other ideas, because right now, Big Pecks is just terrible. Next, we have Wonder Skin compared to Good as Gold. Wonder Skin lowers the accuracy of status moves that target the user from their current accuracy down to 50%. So quite literally, if it's not perfectly accurate, it's 50% accurate. This is cool since it gives a coin flip chance for a status move to miss, but doesn't just outright grant an immunity or something. It's not given to very many Pokemon, and most of them have a different ability they would rather use instead, but in theory, it sounds decent. Good as Gold straight up grants an immunity to all status moves. This is the kind of special treatment you get when you're the 1000th Pokemon. This means that Goldengo cannot be taunted, put to sleep with Spore, Encored, disabled, parting shotted, thunder waved, etc. It also means that it can't have any beneficial status moves used on it from an ally though, which is the only downside that Good as Gold has compared to Wonder Skin. Moves like Heal Pulse and Helping Hand will work just fine on a Mon with Wonder Skin, even with the accuracy drop, because those moves have perfect accuracy, whereas they will fail if used on Goldengo. If you really wanted to use a strategy like this, the ally would have to have Mold Breaker. Lastly, we have Rockhead compared to Magic Guard. Rockhead protects the user from taking recoil damage. Some moves deal recoil damage, which is self-inflicted damage based off how much damage was dealt to the target as a drawback to their high power and high accuracy. This is solid on mons like Hisuian Arcanine, which get strong stab moves that usually deal recoil but won't thanks to Rockhead. Magic Guard protects the user from all indirect damage, so recoil, crash damage, life orb damage, entry hazards, status conditions, sandstorm, and more. To be fair, none of the Pokemon that get Magic Guard would want to use any recoil moves since they're almost all physical, so being able to use recoil moves without taking recoil damage is unique to the Pokemon with Rockhead. Magic Guard is still superior in every single way, and it's one of the only broken abilities that's not banned in almost any ability, which by the way is where I got the inspiration for this video. And those are balanced Pokemon abilities compared to broken ones. Let me know which ones I missed or if I made any mistakes in my explanations. Thanks for watching.